folks. I'm Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One. We're here on Channel 17 Cox Cable, Fridays at 7 o'clock, and then you check the schedule that's available on the website for the repeats all during the week. We're also on their website. You go to the demand button for TVSB and you run all the way to the bottom. They don't like me, so they put me the last show, Worthen One. They try and tell me it's the alphabet, but I know the alphabet. There's got to be a Z. And then you can go to YouTube, Worthen One. Last time I checked, there were 10 shows playing, and then they were starting with the most recent. And I'm told they just peel off that you can search forever 200 shows. So plenty of platforms to see us on. Say that mainly because we're broadcasting to an area from Goleta to Carpinteria, and people are interested in this show worldwide. And I've even got calls from people. I think you called me once from Paris.
Who's that? Oh.
And so really the host today, and I'm just his jovial sidekick, I'm turning the host duties over to Arthur von Wiesenberger, a longtime Santa Barbara celebrity and a friend of this station, and once a publisher of the last daily we had here. So it's my pleasure to turn the show over to Arthur, and he'll tell you about AnimalZone worldwide. You're conquering the world from Santa Barbara.
You know, a lot of people conquer the world from Santa Barbara. I mean, think about how many things started here, including Jim Worthen, who sometimes is known as Jimmy, and other times known as Worthley.
Motel 6,
yeah.
Sambo. Yeah.
Sambo's, sure. Remember, Sambo's took off from here. Had The Habit.
Yeah.
A lot of good things. Yeah. So Santa Barbara is a good place to launch good ideas. But anyway, yeah, we have an AnimalZone show which has now gone international, and that's terrific. That makes me thrilled because it gets me on the road. You know, you remember in the old days here at TVSB, we used to do a show called Around the World. It was a travel show, which I love doing. And we have people all over flying around, traveling, telling people what are good hotels to stay at, different airlines to use, cruise ships, you name it. We had that information.
Yeah, I forgot who I was talking to, and I said, you used to have this show Around the World, and I think you had it for
20 plus years.
Yeah, and you had a fake cockpit of a plane.
Flight deck. No, we actually, yes, we had what appeared to be, you were in an aircraft, which was sort of part of the fun of it. The problem was the pandemic, because when the pandemic hit, everyone stopped traveling. It was the kiss of death for the travel industry, and resorts went belly up, and nobody was able to travel anywhere. I mean, a few places allowed you, Sweden was reasonable, but how many shows can you do about Sweden? Yeah, as far as travel goes. So the show ended up, our sponsors, a lot of them went out of business. I mean, we had, the Goleta Beachside, which was a sponsor, Endless Summer was a sponsor. All these companies went away during the pandemic.
I'm amazed. Trivia question.
Yeah.
From Stearns Wharf to Mitchell Terrena, there are only two businesses that have been in business since the 1950s.
Oh.
One is the Christian Science Reading Room.
Yeah.
And the other is Santa Barbara Travel.
Interesting. So Santa Barbara Travel, yes, held out.
Yeah, it's been there forever.
But so many went away, and that's really a sad thing to see, because a lot of these were mom and pop operations that, they live on a pretty tight budget, but boy, when you suddenly couldn't get customers and you had to fire your team, what are you going to do? You got to say farewell. Yeah. But the good news about the pandemic, two things about the pandemic that were good news. One was that for us, doing a show about companion animals and AnimalZone, which we launched in 2018, when the pandemic hit, everybody started to want to have animals at home because they were stuck at home. So the animal shelters there was a run on animals. Santa Barbara Humane, the great animal shelter out here in Goleta, they ran out of animals. They actually had rescued so many animals that they had to go further afield and rescue animals from shelters in Bakersfield or in Fresno or beyond. And they were bringing them in for people because people were wanting to have that pet.
Yeah, I think I remember you doing a show, but Santa Barbara, our animal shelter here, became the overseer for all of Santa Barbara County animal shelters, and I think you did a show where they brought some dogs over from the Central Valley, and you had the cameras.
Yeah, there were groups that fly small aircraft bringing dogs to Santa Barbara. There's such a great outreach that people do about bringing animals to shelters. But anyway, that was one of the good pieces of news. The other good piece of news, which I just learned today from Mark Larson. You know Mark Larson, the great star of San Diego radio, TV, and everything else, and he's the MC at the YF Reagan Center events, like today's event. Mark said that one thing he found out was because of the pandemic, we can all take 3 years off of our life. So you're much younger than you think you are. I'll buy that. Anyway, so yes, AnimalZone has gone worldwide. We started by covering the U.S., so we started first everything from California to Florida and in between. Not everything, but a lot of them.
A couple of both Reno and Las Vegas shelters, and I think there was a cat program in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about shortly because that's coming up.
Oh, sorry.
No, because Las Vegas, we've gone back to. We filmed in Las Vegas a couple of years ago, and because our crew has moved to Las Vegas, we thought, well, let's go there and film with them. And there's so many great stories. You never think about Las Vegas as being, other than great nightlife and a good place to spend money. Not really what they do about animals, but there's a very large animal welfare groups that are looking after animals and trying to find them, rehoming them, and just caring about animals.
I remember I called you one time. We were going to get together to have coffee or drink, and I said, "Where are you?" And you said, "Las Vegas." And about 2 hours later, I quit laughing. Yeah, you're doing AnimalZone in Las Vegas?
No, I would not have believed that Las Vegas would be a place you'd do stories about animal welfare, but in fact, it's amazing. I mean, we can talk about it a little bit, but maybe what we should do before we talk about the episodes is maybe we could show our little teaser about Las Vegas, since every episode of this season, which begins on the 8th of February and will run through till the end of June, I think, something like that. August. It plays for quite a while. It's a weekly show on Cox Cable, Channel 4 or 1004, every Saturday at 8:30 a.m. and also at 5:30 p.m.
That's the show that I would watch. I was your biggest fan, and I'd get it first thing on Saturday morning, and I'd call up and say, "They've screwed up. They've got some sort of soccer game on."
He did. It was
true story.
I had our true watcher here, but yeah, and actually sometimes I have to go back to Cox and say, they mess things up. Oh, here we go. That's the pet psychic, Laura. This was a rescue for wildlife. The cats. This woman is amazing. I'll tell you about her, Alice Whitfield.
So run us through what we just heard and saw there.
You just saw a lot of great people that I think will make this season particularly exciting. Of course, we had Laura Stinchfield, the pet psychic, and she was driving across country in an RV with 7 animals. And you saw some of them out in front of the RV. Well, while we were filming her with all these dogs, all of a sudden we were hearing this squawking inside the RV. She had a parrot in the RV as well. This woman is amazing. Laura is incredible, and she came out and she also, we went to a cemetery with Laura. And that's one of the episodes that is going to be playing on February 8th and again three months later. And that was filmed with Dr. Paul Koudounaris. And Paul is an amazing writer. I think he was a professor at UCLA, but he writes very in-depth books about unusual topics. He wrote a book about cats called A Cat's Tale, which looked at the history of cats from the early Egyptians all the way to today. And it has incredible stories about these cats. But his latest book, which on the surface sounds a little depressing, is called Faithful Until Death. And Faithful Until Death is his journey visiting pet cemeteries around the world. And he's fascinated by pet cemeteries because he's very interested in the human-animal bond and the love that we have for animals, and how that love transitions beyond when the pet dies. That you feel this emptiness when you lose an animal, and having memorialized where a pet was helps get through that. And we went out to this very bizarre cemetery in Boulder City called the Boulder City Pet Cemetery. It's out in the middle of the desert. You drive out on a highway, and unless you knew where it was, you'll never find it. But you have to climb over some fencing because it's federal land, and it's not official. It's not an official cemetery, but luckily the federal government says, well, we're not doing anything else with it. So, and it's been that way for many, many years. They've had, I guess back in the pioneer days and early days of Las Vegas, they wanted to bury their pets somewhere, and some of them were horses, many of them were dogs, cats, rabbits, other things like that. So you walk in, and at first you just see, kind of very simple little signs or little evidence that something is buried there. As you get further into the cemetery, the graves are more a little more exotic, a little more expanded. There was one grave we got to where there was a mailbox on a stick next to the grave, and it was so that people could leave messages for the dog that was buried underneath there. And it's very heartwarming to see how people deal with the loss. Really is what it boils down to. Now, it's probably the most, I would say, the most rustic of the cemeteries around. We've been to a pet cemetery in Calabasas, which is very luxurious. I mean, it's beautiful. That's where a lot of the celebrities have their pets buried there. Valentino has his dogs there. Alfred Hitchcock has his dogs there. There's Tawny, the lion, who was an MGM lion that was buried there. There's a lot. You can walk around. It's like the pets of the stars.
And they have tombstones.
They have some really nice markers, grave markers for these animals. And there's some mysteries about, like where Valentino's dogs were buried. Every year there'd be a couple of roses put there, and the people who ran the cemetery could never find out who was leaving the roses, but they were there every year, same day every year, which must have meant something to somebody about Valentino's dogs. I think he had Great Danes. Or Dobermans.
Was it you who told me that there was a 10-lot cemetery in Hollywood or West Los Angeles?
Well, the one in Calabasas is the one that I'm familiar with. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's other ones as well. The most opulent of all the pet cemeteries that Paul had seen was in Paris, and he said they made these very opulent, beautiful sculptures of dogs, and it was all memorialized with histories about the animal and its birth, its death, what it was. He said in I think it was Norway, where people draw on pieces of wood or on stone pictures of their dog, and they leave that as a marker. So people in different cultures have different ways of addressing the loss of an animal, but it's all from the heart, which is what makes this cemetery so interesting.
Well, do people in that realm feel the same way about Hopalong Cassidy's stuffed dog in Gene Autry's stuffed horse in out in Barstow somewhere at his museum? And
I don't know if it's hard hard to equate a stuffed animal in a museum versus a buried animal in a grave.
Yeah.
But one of the fascinating graves which we saw was one that was it said Flash was the name of the dog, and it was a German Shepherd, and it was the descendant of Rin Tin Tin. It was I guess it would be the great grandson of Rin Tin Tin. And I guess, back in the day did you know the story about Rin Tin Tin? That when they had the first Academy Awards, that he got the Academy Award when they got all the votes in and the people who were doing the Academy Awards said, we can't give an award to the dog, and so, they did something else, but they wanted to make it a serious awards event. But Rin Tin Tin was so beloved, it was a real star. And not a lot of people know this, and Paul told me this. He said, a lot of people think Rin Tin Tin is buried in Paris because there's a grave marker for Rin Tin Tin and, star of cinema and all this. Well, that's a French Rin Tin Tin. Had nothing to do with the one that we saw on TV. The one we saw on TV was apparently buried at his owner's home in Beverly Hills. And then the owner lost his house in a foreclosure because they stopped making the series and he didn't have any more income. And the dog had died, so he buried the dog on the property, and then he moved to Riverside or somewhere like that. And eventually the property sold. The people who are living there today, Paul doesn't think that they even know that Rin Tin Tin is buried at that property because there's no marker or anything. But, that's a curious thing about animals.
What about Lassie?
Yeah, and there were a lot of Lassies. Remember, I think they went through 4 or 5 different Lassies. And another beloved dog, But the great thing about this book is it really explores some of that. So we have a clip that shows Dr. Paul in the grave in the cemetery at Boulder City Pet Cemetery, and maybe we can take a quick look at it and see
Can you pull up
what you
that
think.
clip, Michael?
Yeah, well, hopefully it'll work. You never know. As the guy
Oh,
said,
we woke Michael up again.
There we go. There he is. Can we hear him? Maybe not. See, that's the mailbox I was talking about, where he's explaining. Right below there is where the dog was buried, and people would come in, and they would, I guess the owners would leave little notes to them, or sometimes a little flower.
Well, that's the mailbox you
That's
were
the
talking
mailbox,
about.
right next to a grave. It's sort of a sweet gesture, to do that. And this is Tawny, the lion, who was buried with his best friend, which was a kitty cat that the woman who was looking after him had gotten to keep him company. So both Tawny and the cat are both buried there, and there's a beautiful monument. That's one in Calabasas. Being an MGM lion, he had quite a lot of good success, a lot of work. And then, there's a close-up of him. You can sort of see a beautiful lion. I mean, they're wonderful.
And that's on his tombstone.
That's on his tombstone. And then I don't know what else we have on this particular bit of footage, but what you really realize is that these animals are very much a part of a family. That all animals, I think, are members of families, and you don't. A lot of people don't appreciate it until you don't have one, until you've lost one. If you've never had an animal, then you don't know the loss that exists. But you know what it's like when you lose an animal. It's heartbreaking, and it can be as painful as losing a family member, or sometimes more so.
Yeah, it's and being a semi-rancher, it's burying them yourself.
Yeah.
I remember we had a nanny goat for milk for my son, who couldn't take his mother's milk or even whatever they give babies, and so we got a goat. And when she died about 2 years later, we didn't want the little kids to know, and so I'm out there digging a grave for this goat, and to keep the kids inside, and
it's moving. Anyway, luckily the series isn't all sad and tearful. We've got some great stuff. We filmed an amazing woman up in I guess it was outside of Mount Charleston, which is that mountain outside of Las Vegas, very tall mountain. They have snow on the mountain sometimes. I think they even ski it sometimes. Any case.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Yeah. She was a fascinating woman. Alice Whitfield is her name. And when I first talked to her, I learned that she was a actress and a voice coach. And she worked with some of the biggies like Dick Van Dyke and Lucille Ball back in New York. She's now in her 80s. Little woman. She's not very tall, and she's got bright green hair because she didn't like to have white hair. And she told me that she had. I said, well, you were a voice coach and you were also on Broadway. She said, well, yeah, I had a show at Carnegie Hall, and I went. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Oh, practice, practice, practice. No, that's the joke. How did she get to Carnegie Hall? She got in a show that was called Jacques Brel is Alive and Well and Living in Paris, and she would
Who's
sing.
alive and well?
Jacques Brel. He was a famous French singer, and she would sing his songs, and she has a beautiful voice. Even this little woman just belts it out. So this was one of the longest running shows at Carnegie Hall. It was that successful, one woman show. Anyway, so. She said, I don't really like people very much. So I know there's a lot of animal lovers feel like that. They prefer animals. But anyway, she said, I don't like people very much, but I want to care for them. And she moved to Las Vegas. She married a guy that she knew from when she was 16 years old in school in the Bronx. And they both went their separate ways. And they ended up getting together when she was in her late 70s, and they got married. I mean, there's hope.
Did they get together in New York?
No.
In Las Vegas.
She was in New York. He disappeared and ended up going to Taiwan to make furniture. He has a big furniture business out there, and she lost touch of him. But someone found him for her as a gift, and said, "Here, Alice, this is a little surprise for you. This is his contact information." She made contact with him. They were both out of relationships, and they decided to meet up in Hawaii. All that great passion that existed back when they were teenagers resurfaced in their late 70s, and they're married and living now near Mount Charleston with this fabulous stables that they have for rescuing horses. She adores horses, and so she didn't want to see horses that were maybe they'd been show horses, or they could have been race horses, or they could have been even just pet animals or whatever that ended up going into auction that ended up being sold, unfortunately, to down south, where they turn into dog food. So she would rescue these poor horses that had plenty of life in them still, and look after them, and she put them in these beautiful stables. Tell you, I'd be happy living in these stables. They were so nice. And what was the most amazing thing is she'd go in the stables and she'd start singing, "Getting to Know You, Getting to Know," that song, and they all start coming to her. It's like they like music.
You personally, or Wendy McCaw, had some relationship with saving a burro, or?
Oh yeah. Wendy rescued 2 burros off of BLM land. The Bureau of Land Management was moving, sadly, donkeys off of federal land, and they were putting them into pens. And who knows what happens if they don't get taken over? So she got 2 of them, and she's had them since they were, very small. And now they're in their 20s. Well, one passed, but the other one is probably in his late 20s, and he's great. And then we have another rescue from the neighborhood, which is a hinny, which is like a donkey, or rather like a mule, but in reverse parentage. And then we have 3 rescue cats, one that came from the sequoias from my ranch up there, 2 that came from Kitten Rescue LA when we were filming. We were filming, and this kitten came over while we were filming. He crawls up onto my shoulder, starts licking my ear. Well, what are you going to say? You got to adopt him, right? You can't leave him alone. And he's kind of.
No dogs?
We had a dog. We rescued a pit bull, which we didn't even know was a pit bull.
Oh, that's right. I
Mikey.
remember.
And Mikey was being cared for by a group called Care for Paws, a wonderful rescue. White and black.
Huh?
Black and white.
Black and white.
And Mikey was at a kind of adoption event that was being held at the Ark down in Carpinteria. There's a pet store there. And we looked at the dog, and he was so sweet, and you could tell that he's had injuries, and he was young. He's probably 8 months old or whatever. And we both kind of fell for him. It was love at first sight. And we went over to a restaurant, had a little lunch, and talked about it. Said, do we want to take on this dog? And we both agreed, well, we'll give it a try. And so we talked to Isabel Gulo, who runs Care for Paws, and she cared for this dog personally. And she didn't know what it was, and I didn't know what it was. I said, well, it's really cute, whatever it is, black and white, and it's got a really big head and big paws. And anyway, we were hearing, well, I think it's a boxer mix. Boxer, and boxer sounded safe. It was 100% pit bull. We did DNA afterwards. We found out what it was.
I can remember when I met him because I had a prejudice against pit bulls. I thought the breed should be extinguished. And then I met Mikey.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad. See, he was a good ambassador because he really was pit bulls are wonderful dogs. They get a terrible rap, and that's mostly because of the owners. Even Mikey was originally bred to be a fighting dog. And luckily, I guess it was up in Nepoma or somewhere up there, the shelters rescued him from this horrible breeder that was doing this stuff. And his real name was Mike Tyson. Gives you an idea what they were planning. And Mikey wouldn't hurt a fly. I mean, he was so sweet. He was so gentle, and he always was all the way through till we lost him. He died after being 9 years old, which is way too soon.
Well, you mentioned Mike Tyson. He has mellowed, just like you're talking about the dog. He's become very mellow and loving, and
there's hope, huh? For human race.
You say pit bulls got a bad rap because of their owners. I've come to the conclusion that there are no bad animals. It's always bad owners, and that doesn't include necessarily meanness. Maybe it's ignoring them. Maybe it's not caring for them, not giving them
love and attention.
Yeah.
I mean, animals respond to love and time and spending, just like humans do too. It's across the board. But no, we were very lucky with Mike. He was great. And then that's sort of other than a lot of wildlife, especially up in the Sequoias, I've got foxes up there, bobcats, bears.
Your great ranch in the Sequoia.
Deers are up there. I mean, it's great. None of them. I don't even give them any treats. I don't believe in feeding wildlife. I let them do their thing. But I just sit there and sometimes admire them. They're beautiful, especially when you get a group of half dozen or a dozen deer going across the pathways, because they make their own little routes, through things. And I just think, God, I'm so lucky to have these guys here.
You and I had a disagreement on this. In season, you don't want me to shoot a buck.
No, I'd rather you pass the buck.
But there is a need. Pennsylvania, I guess, is the worst place where they have several 100,000 wild deer. There is a need to thin the herds and everything that used to be natural. It used to be wolves.
So you need to bring back the wolves.
Yeah. So
the problem is that when man gets involved with managing wildlife, then things go haywire. Wildlife has a way of working itself out. Wolves are coming back into California now, thank goodness, and they are a wonderful predator. I mean, yes, they're not somebody you may want to run into in a dark alley, but boy, they keep everything in check. And
well, this is where you and I have a confusion or disagreement. Oregon has put a bounty. They'll give you, I think it's up to $200 to shoot a wolf, because they've several 100,000 wolves all of a sudden, and that's thrown the deer population and the mountain goat it's just thrown nature off course. Isn't there a place for man to help bring back balance?
I don't think so. I think it's better just let nature do its own thing. The problem is that if you don't know, if you got in there and you said, okay, we're going to get rid of all these wolves because they're eating all the deer, the other things that we don't know that eliminating a species can cause, I think is the real danger. I mean, let animals do their thing. Nature has a great way of balancing things out. It really does, if you just give nature time. But we tend to get involved too much with trying to manage nature. Now, pets, companion animals, dogs, rabbits, domestic rabbits, cats, barnyard animals. That's where man.
Rabbits, Hassenpfeffer. It's a German dish from rabbit. I always throw them a curve.
Yeah, that's what I do. Anyway,
you're a vegetarian.
No, no. I live with a vegetarian, but I'm not.
You eat steaks. I know.
I eat fish. I thank the animal that I'm eating. You gave me this nutrition, but I can't give up on certain things yet. I might one day. One of my kids was a vegetarian for most of his youth. He just eat pizza and pasta and stuff like that. But eventually he discovered hamburgers and anyway, that's another story. Hey, we have another clip maybe we can show, which is kind of fun. This one was at a place called Hearts Alive Village, and it's one of 2 cat cafes in Las Vegas. You know what a cat cafe is?
Well, there was one in Santa Barbara.
Still there?
Where you could go in
on Victoria
have
Street?
Coffee,
Yeah.
Wine, I think, and play with the cats.
Yeah, I mean,
they would play with.
Oh, you can adopt them, which is sort of half the idea. So I don't know if we've got that footage, but this is Hearts Alive Village.
Hearts Alive Village is an amazing organization because you have so many different aspects. As I was saying earlier, we were up at your horse rescue, which is an incredible place, HAV Horse Rescue. We were a while back, we were filming at the food distribution situation. Remember during the pandemic?
That's right.
You had you had all this food that you needed to get to people,
right?
Because you were worried that people were not going to feed their creatures, and they didn't. The worst thing you want to do
Las
is
Vegas was really going through tough times
because they
when
can't
the pandemic.
Absolutely, and we still have that. We have a Hearts Alive Village helpline available to the community so that we can do our best to keep families with their pets. That's our goal.
Right, and that's your mission, isn't it?
Yes.
And so how many facilities do you have now? I mean,
well, right now we have the Cat Cafe. We have an everyday adoption center located inside PetSmart in Henderson that's just booming. We did approximately 1,100 adoptions out of there the last year, which is amazing.
And it is amazing, and they have within this cat cafe, they have different rooms for different types of cats. They have some cats that are seniors. They have some cats that are juniors, like yourself, and then they have cats that are ready for adoption, cats that will be available for adoption, and you pay $15 to go inside, and you get beverages and snacks as part of that donation, and then you can spend an hour or 2 with these cats, and if you find one that you particularly like, you can get adoption papers, and they'll vet you to make sure you're the right person to adopt this particular cat.
What's this evil trick you animal adoption people play where you suggest somebody take that dog or cat just for a couple of weeks?
Oh yeah, well, fostering.
That's a dirty trick.
Fostering is probably one of the hardest things to do because you get this animal, you're caring for the animal. Of course, your whole family probably is caring for the animal. You're feeding him, you're walking him, all that. And then at some point they go, I think we've got someone that was ready to adopt. So many times the foster ends up adopting that animal because they've fallen in love with him.
Oh yeah.
And they call that a foster failure. I call that a foster success because the whole idea is you want to get these animals into loving homes. And one of the great shelters here in Santa Barbara, Santa Barbara Humane is doing some amazing things. I don't know if you've followed what they're up to right now, but Santa Barbara Humane, dates back. It's a very old shelter, and unfortunately, a lot of the infrastructure that's out there, and you know where they are off of Patterson. They have that stuff dates back to the 1950s and so forth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the old idea of concrete buildings with cages with no light in it. I mean, the animals are like in jail. And it's like that Sarah McLachlan ASPCA ad where you see all these poor animals.
I think the headquarters was a yellow
Yes.
wood place,
Yeah.
but that was for the people.
yeah. Anyway, I mean, they've done the best they can to get rid of the cage environment and give it some more homey environment, but they really need to just start over because they have a little tiny vet clinic and they need to make a much bigger vet clinic because they bring in animals from around the community that need veterinarian care, especially for people who may not be able to afford the average vet bill, which is as staggering as our medical bills. I mean, I look at the vet bills and I go, wow, I got to get animal insurance, which I have. I have pet insurance for the pets because they go in there for a little procedure and you suddenly get a bill in the thousands of dollars. You go, holy smokes! I didn't realize. Oh, but they're in good health. They better be. But anyway, they want to improve their veterinarian center, which they're planning to build out. They're going to have a much better campus. They don't call it an animal shelter anymore. It's going to be a campus where there's going to be a place for learning stuff about animals, training behavioral issues, how to deal with triggers on animals, so that if you have a dog that's aggressive, they have trainers who will help you break those bad habits because they don't want you to have to relinquish a pet. They want you to adopt and keep the pet, and by making some modifications in behavior, a pet can fit in with almost any lifestyle. So they're building that out. They're going to have a wonderful. They're going to add rabbits to their collection of adoptable pets, which would be nice. Bunnies are like this. I think the third most popular animal to adopt, after cats and dogs. They'll be able to accommodate many more animals in the new setup because they've got a nice 5-acre parcel there. I don't know if you've been out around the entire property, but it's a good layout. And of course, the plans that they have for building this new center is going to be spectacular. It'll be a state-of-the-art animal center. And Carrie Burns, who's the CEO, has got this vision. She did something similar in Florida when she was working for a shelter out there. And
How long has she been here?
She's been here about 5 years, maybe a little bit more, 5-6 years.
Yeah, I think you did a show when she was in her first year or so with her vision, and
yeah, she's very forward-thinking, and what I love is the whole project is called From the Paws Up. We're building from the paws up. I mean, she really is. First and foremost, her and her team are thinking, what's going to be best for the animal? How are they going to become a great adoptable animal in an environment that will make them comfortable? So you create a homey environment. You don't have, cages that are going to be sterile that look like you're in jail. They're going to have, much more of a comfortable room where people can sit and spend time with the animal, and the animal will adapt much more easily to a home environment because that's what they're going to be used to. You have music piped in that's relaxing music. Animals respond to positive energy, so that's what they want to create there.
I have something that aggravates me because animals get sick.
Yes.
Animals get terminal diseases.
Yeah.
And then we have well-to-do people who, I've heard of one who spent $10,000 keeping her dog alive with terminal cancer. And I'm thinking, that's cruel. Chemotherapy for a dog, you know what it does to a human being. You're torturing the dog for your own satisfaction. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that's a very hard question to answer because, I know with humans, some people want to keep their, family members alive as long as they can, and that becomes a big question. Is it in their best interests? Who's benefiting from this? I don't know. I think if I'm when I reach the end of the line, I prefer just to quietly exit and not have to prolong that personally. But everybody is different. You can't really say what's right or what's wrong. But I know that when someone has an animal, I mean, I was just talking to a woman the other day who's got an animal that she adored, and she's now cloning that animal because the animal is either dead or about to die. She's cloning the animal and will have a clone of that animal. I don't know. That's to me a bit Twilight Zone-ish, but
Yeah.
you know, I mean, there's so many animals out
Keep
there.
her away from her grandchildren.
Yeah. Well, it's weird.
I have an image in my mind that I can't let go and probably don't want to. We had a great boxer mix, Petey, and Petey never barked, but he would sit at the door waiting for my son to come in. He was my son. He'd go to work with my son. And on a trip, he was getting older, and on a trip to Seattle, he got very ill, and we took him to the veterinarian. And the image I can't get out of my mind is my son petting him as he was being put down.
Oh, that's so
You know, and
awesome.
I was in the anti-room, and my son was in there petting and hugging as they put him down. But those are blessed images, you know, the love of that dog and the love of this kid. He was in his 30s. You know?
Yeah, well, yeah, but I know. I mean, it's hard for us, and it's even harder for our kids because you see the pain they go through when they lose an animal. But luckily, the good news is that you know, you can bring in animals into your home. There's a lot of them available, and you know, just finding the right combination for the right lifestyles. You know, some people want active dogs because they're out walking, exercising, hiking, going on the beach, whatever, which is great. Some people are couch potatoes, and they just want a dog or a pet that's going to sit on the couch next to them and watch TV. I'm kind of in between. I have both. That Mikey dog I was talking about earlier, he'd love to run on the beach. We go on the beach, walk up and down. You know, he even tried dabbling his paws in the water, but he didn't really like to swim. Plus, he was all muscles, so he'd sink. He wasn't really a good swimmer. But, you know, he loved the beach and digging around the sand, and of course, they love smelling everything on the planet.
Like father, like pet.
Yeah.
You sink.
Yeah. And then when we came back in the house, I'd sit in front of the TV, and he'd sit in his bed next to me. I think I had a nice one of those Costco beds next to me, and he'd curl up next to the bed. And I turn on TV, and I'd be watching, you know, maybe the Comedy Channel or something. I like watching funny stuff, and so I was watching that. I'd be laughing, and he'd look at me when I was laughing, and I'd see a big smile on his face. So he got the idea that, you know, whatever we're doing, it's fun. So you know, that's a great thing to be able to do with an animal.
Yeah. Well, we were talking earlier, and we've talked about Monty Roberts, and I have of the same ilk of how big animals, horses, I don't know about cows, but horses respond to the person. And if you treat them right, you give them love, you look them in the eyes, and you run your hand down the side of their body or over at the top. They love to be, you know, between the eyes, be scratched there. And there's a real bond that you can develop without too much work, you know. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, animals live on trust, and if a horse trusts you, or a donkey or a henny or a mule, whatever, trusts you, you'll have an amazing relationship with that animal. They'll come to you, you give them a carrot, you made friends with them, you know, and as long as you don't use violence in trying to get them to do what you want to do. That was where unfortunately the old style of breaking horses was so bad, because they could break them eventually, but it did terrible damage to the trust and relationship between man and horse. Monty Roberts paved the way of this horse whisperer approach, where you look at the horse, you love the horse, you tell the horse what you want to do. You're using nonviolent approach towards getting the horse. And what's amazing is when we were filming AnimalZone in Japan last year, we went to a horse rescue near Osaka, and this fellow has this wonderful rescue for horses. Again, rescuing horses that have been in the racetracks, and after 3 or 4 years, they're no longer racing horses. And in Japan, unfortunately, they don't have a very good future. He would get those horses and have them retrained to do other things, be show horses, be therapy horses, be riding horses, whatever. There was a Japanese man who was training these horses for other activities, and I talked to him. He trained with Monty Roberts. I'm like, this is a small world.
We're talking about AnimalZone worldwide. You don't think of horses in Japan.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
not a common, if you think of Japan, you're not thinking about somebody riding a horse across the green areas or.
I didn't think about it either, but also between Japan and even in Hong Kong, horse racing is really a big sport.
Oh yeah.
So we got a chance to see how the Japanese are dealing with horses that are no longer racing, and this guy is what I call an AnimalZone hero, because he's caring for them and he's finding them another life, and he loves his horses.
Well, we've had a scandal in Southern California at Santa Anita, and that comes to the appropriateness of horse racing.
Mm-hmm.
The drugs to get the horses ready. I think last season they had 25 or so horses just die.
Yeah.
And these are young, 2, 3-year-old, 4-year-old horses, not 25-year-old horses.
Right.
And so it's finding the line where you say to the people who are caregivers to the animals, you can't do that anymore. And I think we, as custodians for animals, and even, I hate to say the government, but private enterprise like Santa Anita, they have to say to the trainer, no, don't give them that drug, and then have them run.
Yeah.
And
that expands even to other things like greyhound racing. Mm-hmm. And when we were filming in Florida, they've been shutting down greyhound racing, which I think is a good idea, because I don't think it's in the best interest of greyhounds. And greyhounds are wonderful, wonderful dogs. I don't know if you've ever had one or been around one, but we went to this one woman who was doing greyhound rescues called Awesome Greyhounds, and she would rescue these greyhounds. She would get them from the people who were using them for racing originally, and then rehabilitating them and then finding them homes. And some of them would be going to vets because they were good therapy dogs as well. And it was wonderful to see dogs having a better life.
you know so little about me. My wife and I adopted a whippet, which is a form of greyhound, and raced, and it got past its prime, and the choice was somebody was going to put it down, and we adopted it, and it was a great pet. And finally, as we got other animals, we had a trainer who helped us with our animals, and the trainer took the dog.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, at least it went on to another happy home, right?
Yeah.
If you were going to get a pet today, what would you get?
Huh?
If you were going to get a pet today, what would you get? Do you have any dreams of any particular kind of animals that you'd like to have? A dog?
Scotty.
Cat? Oh, a Scotty dog?
Yeah.
Oh, they're
Scotty.
cute. They're very cute.
From childhood, yeah.
Yeah?
I've been associated with people who have Chihuahuas.
Yeah.
And Chihuahuas are good to kick across the room.
Oh, no. Don't say
I
that.
mean, gently. No, don't bite me in the ankle.
I think I could see you with a Scotty, because I think you like that black and white Scotch that has a Scotty as its emblem. You and the dog can enjoy that together. Scotty is a beautiful, smart dog. Those terriers are brilliant dogs. My mom had a terrier, a Cairn Terrier, like in The Wizard of Oz, like Toto. And this dog was called Nelson, after Lord Nelson, Admiral Nelson, and he was a very strong character, very funny, and she loved him like more than me, which I can't blame her. He never talked back to her. And she had him for many, many years. And again, when he passed, it was a huge emotional challenge,
yeah.
you know, I mean, especially for an older person. So I think that, you know, if you have animals in your house and it might be your mother's animal or your father's animal or your aunt's animal, and they pass, you really got to care for that person, because we don't realize how deep that cuts in someone's soul.
Yeah, I find it difficult to not say, I'd like to kill that person. I was in junior high, I had Lassie, and I was going away to conference, and Lassie crawled underneath our house and started whining, and somebody had poisoned her.
Oh no.
And you know, that really struck me, how she was suffering. I had to leave, and my parents took care of it, but they suffer mentally, but they also suffer physically with the terrible things that people do to them.
Yeah, well, actually, I think use of any poison for anything is a great negative. I mean, you know, when I hear people using rat poison and other things to get rid of certain pests, I go, please don't do that, because the problem is that, yes, a rat may eat that poison and die, but then a bird may come down like a hawk and eat that rat, and then it dies. It doesn't just stop with the rat. So you're causing a terrible chain of events. There's a much more humane ways to deal with animals that are pests, where they don't get killed. You can move them along, you know, and that's
I hear
what we do.
I hear the docks in New York and London, just because of the rat problem, just get bigger cats.
Well, cats are, you know, we were saying earlier about how cats were revered by the Egyptians, because cats got rid of the mice that had been eating the grain that the Egyptians were harvesting along the Nile. And of course, you know, they didn't, back in those days, they didn't know what to do, but the cats kept the population in check, and the Egyptians had lots of good grain to eat.
How do you feel about fish?
That's an interesting question. I mean, you know, how far down the list of animals do you want to go as far as concern?
Are they an animal? Fish?
Well, they're pescatarian. I mean, you know, they're a fish. I mean, a fish is an animal, and I've heard that, you know, some fish have strong emotions, respond to people in a certain way. You ever go to an area, a pond that has koi in it, they'll come running up to you,
Yeah.
like a dog does. Does that make you want to stop eating fish? You know, it's a very hard line to cross, because, you know, you can become truly a vegetarian, or even more so a vegan, and not eat anything that comes from animals. And I applaud vegans. I would love to aspire to that someday. I'm not there yet. My goal is to be kind to all animals. I even save spiders in the house. If we have a spider in the house, we'll
Dr. Livingston.
we'll catch the spider, and we'll take the spider out and put the spider outside and close the door, and then the spider goes on, because spiders do great things. If you don't like mosquitoes, get a spider.
Yeah.
Spider will build a beautiful net web, and they'll get all your mosquitoes and all your bugs that you don't want.
Well, that's the famous African missionary doctor, Dr. Livingston,
I presume.
would save, you know, spiders for that very reason, that they took care of the mosquitoes.
And you won't find any poisons in our house. We have no poison at all. No raid, no chemicals. What we use are organic things that will help persuade a pest to go elsewhere, like diatomaceous earth. Have you ever seen that? It's that white powder. You can buy it anywhere. And diatomaceous earth, you can put into a little dispenser and spray it it shoots out
That's-
this earth. You spray it around wherever, like there's ants. If you have ants and you don't like ants,
Yeah, that's the basis for the swimming pools, the diatomaceous filters.
right. And it works. I mean, whenever there's an ant infestation in the house, we just put a little diatomaceous earth. When you see they're coming in, they go away, and it doesn't kill them. It just
Ants?
gets ants. Yeah, we don't kill our ants. We persuade them to go elsewhere. We say, go to Jim Worthen's house. Here's a map.
Oh, we've 2.5 minutes.
Yes.
What is the future of AnimalZone International? We didn't even get into the cow fights.
Oh, the ones from Switzerland, yeah.
Yeah.
No, AnimalZone, you know, we find that going internationally or going to other places around the world, we're bringing in cultures that are different from ours, different approaches to animals, different understandings. Some communities, some countries are incredibly advanced, even more so than in the United States. Others are trying to get to where we are. But you learn that animals are such an integral part of society, of cultures. Whether it's in Switzerland where we were filming or in Japan where we were filming. I mean, we're going to go shoot season 14 in Hawaii. And there's a lot of fascinating animal stories in Hawaii that are different because there's a lot of animals you can't find elsewhere than in Hawaii, from the birds and the seals and other creatures. So, you know, I think we're going to keep exploring the world, try and bring that information to our audience because we really want to educate people as much as we can. We also want to entertain them because, after all, you're watching TV. And finally, we want to inspire them to be good to animals, be good to their animals, be good to animals they meet across their life.
We drifted from our promise of telling worldwide stories to anecdotal and personal and animal stories. So you got to come back.
My pleasure. Anytime, Jim. It's always a joy.
Michael always turns the music on 15 minutes before I'm finished. And he turns the TV off 12 minutes before I'm finished.
You need a 2-hour show. That's really what it boils down to. But it's always a pleasure. You're a wonderful host, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. And I hope you'll all watch AnimalZone or check us out on animalzone.org.
And that's the new season starts the 8th.
8th of February will be going on for the next 6
That's
months.
3 days.
I know. Yeah.
That's close. We've cut it really close.
We like to live on the edge.
Arthur, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Really a pleasure.